So let's talk about two things I want you to add to your morning routine that you likely are not doing right now. One is tongue scraping, and one is actually oil pulling. These are dirt cheap alternatives to add to your morning routine. And we're going to be so intentional about every step of our way. We use a soft toothbrush. We use hydroxyapatite toothpaste. The next thing that we do is after we brush our teeth for the first time, we're going to take a tongue scraper and scrape our tongue. I went out and I actually wondered if there was any clinical research on the effectiveness of tongue cleaning. And I'm going to link these studies for you so you guys can see these. There is a meta-analysis on tongue cleaning methods, which is a comparative clinical trial employing a toothbrush and a tongue scraper. And I'll just take you to the conclusion section. All of these studies I'm going to link for you. But basically, the tongue scraper showed a 75% reduction in VSCs, which are volatile sulfur compounds, versus the toothbrush alone category. So we're brushing our teeth, but we're leaving seething bacteria that embeds itself into our tongue. Our tongue is moist. The back of our mouth is dark. It's oxygen deprived, and it can become a breeding ground for bacteria. The best kind of tongue scraper to use is a really cheap copper tongue scraper. You can get these at CVS. You can get them at Walgreens. So you're going to brush your teeth with a soft brush. You're going to use hydroxyapatite toothpaste, and then you're just going to scrape your tongue. You're going to be shocked what comes off if you haven't done this before. This is going to lower the VSCs in the volatile sulfur compounds in your oral cavity so that they don't have the gases that are needed to breed bacteria. Really interesting study. The second thing I want to talk about is something called oil pulling. And the oil pulling it's a part of Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurvedic medicine is an Indian form of medicine. It's actually the oldest form of medicine in the world. It's based on observation. They put you into categories like Pitta, Pitta Kapha. Well, things kind of freaking out a little bit there. There it goes. It doesn't like it when I make it too big. But I'm going to send you a clinical study on the effect of oil pulling with coconut oil to improve dental hygiene and oral health. This was a systemic review of multiple clinical studies, and essentially it had 182 participants. There were 42 eligible studies. I mean, this is an excellent study for you, for those of you that don't believe that putting a little bit of raw, organic, extra virgin coconut oil, cold pressed coconut oil in your mouth, about a half a tablespoon, and swishing it between your gums can have a major impact on your oral health. So you've scraped your tongue now, you've gotten the VSCs out of your mouth, these volatile sulfur compounds, and now we're just going to take dirt cheap. You can actually get it at Costco. They have tubs of extra virgin cold pressed organic coconut oil. Please do not, some of these studies were actually done with seed oils. Please don't use seed oils. They're very pro-inflammatory. You know how I feel about seed oils. You take these canola plants and these rape seeds and these other plants, and you put them in a commercial press. And because the substance that comes out is very gummy, what happens is they have to degum it with hexane. Hexane is one of the most powerful neurotoxins that we know of. And after they degum it with hexane, they take that oil and they heat it to 405 degrees, which turns it rancid. And once that oil is rancid, it's now putrefied and it smells. So they have to deodorize it. They deodorize it with sodium hydroxide, a very powerful carcinogen. So you take a neurotoxin and a carcinogen used to degum and deodorize an oil that you've made putrid and rancid by heating it to temperatures that that plant and that seed or that oil cannot encounter on the surface of the earth. I get so much pushback on social media when I start talking about the negative impact of seed oils. And very often I'm not attacking the plant. I'm attacking the distance from the plant to your table. A lot of what we talk about in my community is how do we just get around the system? You know, people say, well, gosh, sunflower seeds can't hurt you. Well, no, sunflower seeds in their raw form can't hurt you. But when you put them in commercial presses, you add hexane, sodium hydroxide, and then about a quarter of the oil that we see on the shelf, especially vegetable oils, has been additionally bleached. And then your American Heart Association does you the favor of sticking a beautiful little picture of a smiling heart on there, and it calls it a heart healthy oil. It is anything but heart healthy. I'm going to go down that road in another talk. But these were randomized controlled trials, and it suggested that oil pulling with coconut oil may have a beneficial effect on improving oral health and dental hygiene. It says that further clinical studies are needed, so I actually went and pulled several of these clinical studies up. There is a study, a research article on coconut oil, specifically another one using, this was just looking at different types of oils. And this one, they did use seed oils, but they were only measuring the microbiome and the health of the gums. So in the mornings, we're going to brush with a soft toothbrush. We're going to use a hydroxyapatite toothpaste. We're going to add a tongue scraper to our morning routine, and we're going to add oil pulling. All right, your morning routine for oral health is done. Let's move to phase 2. Phase 2, we're going to start talking about light. And the reason why I want to talk about light is that we are very photovoltaic beings. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, light is very powerful when it passes through our skin. I'm going to talk about what we do in dark climates as well. But let's talk about why getting morning sunlight is the most powerful thing that you can do for your morning routine. As you wake up in the morning, a waking hormone called cortisol is beginning to rise in your bloodstream. It's also rising in your brain. The sleep hormone, melatonin, is starting to fall off. There's a second hormone that's also, there's a second compound, that's also rising in your body when you wake up in the morning called adenosine. I'm going to come back to that in a second because we're going to talk about delaying our caffeine for 60 to 90 minutes in the morning. And if you're like my wife, that was a really tough one to accept. But we're going to talk about the physiology of our morning routine and why it's so important to do things in a certain sequence. So you're done with your toothbrushing. Now, for me, I go right away and I get into a cold plunge. Before I even go outside and get my first light in the morning, if you don't have a cold plunge or you can't afford a cold plunge, don't worry about it. You can make a cold plunge simply by taking Tupperware containers the night before, filling them full of water, seal them,